Okay, hello Inclusioneers, and welcome to my presentation, Our Path Forward is a Circle, Empowering School Communities Through Inclusion. My name is Robin Stack-Reagan, and I'm looking forward to sharing my presentation with you. Okay, so what we're going to cover today, answering some questions. First off, how did we get here as a field education? What are the challenges and opportunities to this unprecedented school year? And can we as educators promote healing and build community for all of our students? And finally, is inclusion just one more thing to put on our teachers' plates, or can it be the plate? So a little bit about me. My name is Robin Stack-Reagan. I spent over 20 years at a residential treatment facility working as a behavior interventionist. I became a teacher counselor and administrator for the on-ground school, and then I took on training for the entire facility. Our population were students, many of them had been removed from their homes, and they were identified as having emotional disturbance and learning disabilities, often connected to trauma during their early life. From 2005 to 2015, I acted as a consultant trainer, focusing on positive behavior supports and crisis intervention in classrooms. I had the privilege to oversee the first federally funded community school project in LA Unified, and the community school model is something that should be happening everywhere. In 2016, I was privileged to join Circle of Friends, and in 2018, when their founder retired, I became the executive director. So, Circle of Friends, my organization, a little bit about us. Our story is in 1999 at Santa Monica High School. Barbara Poliles, our speech language pathologist, was called into an IEP meeting because the parent had requested that her son have a behavioral goal to make a friend. And in 1999, this sort of stumped the IEP team, and she was brought in and asked if she wanted to figure out how to do that. So she connected this student with some peers who committed to having lunch with him once a week, and it took off. In 2005, when Barb retired from the school district, parents said, you have to adapt this model so it can be at every school. In 2017, we expanded the model to develop internal trainers and partnered with more districts. We're currently with 245 chapters throughout California and the US. And during the last year, as schools were closed, Circle of Friends pivoted as well, and we created online professional development to reach more schools. So our mission, and we added those living with adversity when we did strategic planning in 2019. So our mission is to promote inclusion for students with disabilities and those living with adversity, to empower all students to appreciate difference, build genuine friendship, and stand up to bullying. And our values, which we articulated as part of our planning, is to honor diversity while celebrating our commonality, cultivate friendship and emotional intelligence, support development of the whole child, presume competence and resilience in others, and build advocacy through empowerment. So, if multiple studies have shown that inclusion is a benefit for students with and without disabilities, and the least restrictive environment has been the law through IDEA since 1975, why is it so difficult to actually do? The first is that we're human beings. It is human nature to seek out familiarity and sameness. Safety is sameness. You think about social things like waving to say hello to a stranger or shaking hands. Those actually originated so that we could let the other person know we weren't armed. So survival is very, very important to us. And anytime we encounter someone outside our tribe, we see that as a danger. The second is that our brains are wired to look for patterns and take shortcuts. You think about when you first started driving and all the steps you had to think about, hands on 10 and 2, looking at the rear view mirror, making sure everything's right. If you had to do that every time you got in the car, it would be exhausting before you pulled out of the driveway. but our brain takes shortcuts. They learn the routine. Unfortunately, we can take social shortcuts as well. And based on what we've seen modeled and what we've been exposed to, these create biases. So inclusion involves moving towards our discomfort, which our brain sees as danger. The second reason this is so hard is because of the American public education system. It evolved at the same time as the Industrial Revolution, and so schools were built like factories to get the kids through and give them the skills. But as you know, kids are not cogs. They are unique, they are wonderful, and we have to put more work into them than moving them down the conveyor belt. The second is that for teacher training, it has been very separate. You get a multi-subject credential or you get a specialist credential. And although those kids are showing up in all of our classrooms, teachers have not been trained to work with differences. So inclusion as a model challenges how education has always done things for over 100 years. So the third is that real inclusion takes more than visibility and proximity. So just being able to see someone and being nearby, it doesn't just happen. And you may be familiar with this graphic, starting with pre-IDEA exclusion. Schools could legally tell a family, we can't serve your child, so take them home or put them in an institution. To segregation, we have a special school for your type of child. It's over there, or it's in a separate building on campus. And most schools have stopped with integration. The kids are in the class, they might be in the back or to the side, and they often have their own staff. Inclusion is the goal, to have them fully involved. Verna Myers has a quote, integration is being asked to the party, inclusion is being asked to dance. So inclusion is the goal. I mentioned I came on board as executive director, and one of my first tasks was to create a statement of need, which is explaining why your services are needed and important in the field. So doing research, I found 3 very important studies. Forward Together was done, helping educators unlock the power of students who learn differently. Update on PACER's National Bullying Prevention Center, new statistics. And finally, Education Week did a national survey on how teachers view social emotional learning. So this is what I found. It's not going to be a surprise to you, but it should be validating. First off, students have increasingly complex needs. 1 in 5 students in public schools has a disability or learning difference, and they spend up to 80% of the day in gen ed classrooms. 17.4% have a diagnosed mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. And nearly half of school-age children have experienced trauma or adverse childhood experiences. And students of color have often been impacted by multiple ACEs by the time they start school. The second is that educators have been struggling. 83% of gen ed teachers report that credential programs and training have not prepared them to work with students with disabilities. 23% say their most challenging task is finding ways to help students who appear to be in emotional or psychological distress. And 78% believe it's part of their job to help students develop social emotional skills, but don't know how or when to do this. The third is the fact that bullying has continued to increase in classrooms. PACER found that in 2019 that 1/3 of students reported being bullied. And as we know, students with disabilities are 2 to 3 times more likely to experience bullying. 57% of bullying stops when a peer intervenes, so peers are crucial to stopping this pattern. And finally, research shows that successful strategies to prevent bullying include teachers engaging with students in meaningful, inclusive activities, so giving them that exposure outside their comfort zone, and opportunities for all students to increase their social competence. With all of those issues, it's impacting our districts, and we are losing students, teachers, and funding. And here's some statistics. When students aren't getting their needs met and they show it by acting out and get suspended, that increases the chance of dropping out from 16 to 32%. Each year, 8% of US teachers leave the classroom before retirement, and they report dissatisfaction with compensation, support, and classroom conditions. And you see the cost of teacher turnover. And finally, it costs districts millions of dollars in funding when students miss school to avoid being bullied. And California loses an estimated $276 million annually for safety-related absences. So all of those things were bad news in 1999, but we've had a significant global experience since then. So just being able to see and be close to any of our students was not possible in the last school year. What our students experienced and we experienced in our communities were adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. A study in 2014 on adults in California asked them which experiences they'd had in their life, and you see some of the top ones: emotional or verbal abuse, parental separation, substance abuse, physical abuse, and going down. These were adults reporting on their childhood in California, and many of these adults also were parents. The connection between ACEs and learning is pretty significant. Having 1 to 3 adverse childhood experiences increases your chance to 21%. But if you've had 4 or more ACEs, you have a 51% higher chance of being identified with learning or behavior problems when you start school. The study by Kaiser in 1998 really focused on the first domain of household adverse experiences. They've since expanded that to 2 other domains: the community and the environment. And I'd like you to take a look at all the things involved: violence, structural racism, record heat and droughts, all of these things that can be impacting our children. And I took a look at this and came up with about 20. So if more than 4 can get you into trouble, our students have been impacted globally by a lot in this past year. Fortunately, in California, we have something going for us, and that is the first California Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who you see there, and she was responsible for a lot of the studies I referenced on ACEs. And they put out a roadmap for resilience in December of last year with their commitment to addressing ACEs in our children, specifically as a result of the pandemic, and helping them make their way back. A second is work in Tufts Children's Hospital. They came up with another acronym to address ACEs that they call HOPE, which is Healthy Outcomes from Positive Experiences. HOPE focuses on the buffering effects of positive childhood experiences, our existing strengths, and informing our public approaches, so how we see healthcare, childcare, and education. It draws on some science of the positive framework, strengthening families, and the CDC's Essentials for Childhood program. HOPE provides a common language to describe the kinds of experiences that counteract effects of adverse ones and promote healthy development. Tufts found that there were 4 building blocks that were crucial to helping children come back from adversity. And they identify those as relationships, environment, engagement, and opportunities. So relationships with the family and other children through interpersonal activities. And you see pictures of students at school connecting with their teachers and connecting with each other. Safe, equitable, stable environments for living, playing, and learning at home and at school. Again, you know the importance of students feeling safe at school and having a climate that feels welcoming. Social and civic engagement to develop a sense of belonging and connectedness. Many of our students have experienced the trauma of feeling very helpless as they look at racial unrest and climate change and the pandemic. What can they possibly do? But through civic engagement, volunteering, service projects, making things better, they can experience the fact that they can make a difference. Finally, opportunities for social and emotional growth. So by getting outside their comfort zone, by encountering and learning more about the other, they are developing important skills for life. So programs like Circle of Friends. There are many other programs called Circle of Friends that address things like Alzheimer's and homelessness. We added the path to inclusion to make a distinction to our commitment and mission. And what those programs like ours do is they build awareness as students learn there are other ways of being in the world. From awareness, they gain acceptance as they understand that we all have value and it's okay to be different. From acceptance, they gain appreciation and value of the many strengths and challenges we all have. That appreciation leads to alliances as they join with others in true friendship and communication. And those students end up being advocates by working together to create schools where everyone belongs and feels safe. So how does Circle of Friends do that? As an example, we provide training and consultation for K-12 teams of advisors to implement our program. Our advisors connect 2 to 3 peers to students who are socially isolated due to disability or other challenges. During weekly lunches and meaningful activities, students discover common interests and learn they aren't that different. Friends of all abilities develop social skills, leadership, and self-advocacy through inclusive events at school and in the community. And in terms of data, we've got our program survey and these statements here that administrators and advisors responded to. The print might be a little small, but what you want to see is less blue and green and more yellow and aqua. So before Circle of Friends and after implementing, students with disabilities participated more with gen ed students during activities. If students with disabilities needed assistance, staff saw gen ed students helping them without being asked to. And finally, they saw gen ed students responding to bullying by stepping in or telling an adult. So those are pretty significant changes that are student driven. And in terms of student empowerment, a program that we've been able to add to our school inclusion program is inclusive service learning, which the students in the original program in Santa Monica High School, after joining Circle of Friends and leading for a couple of years, they came to Barb, the founder, and said, you know, the 9th graders are mean. They don't know that we treat each other kindly here. And Barb said, what are you going to do about it? And so those first students created an ability and awareness presentation and got permission to present it to every 9th grade health class during their first year. And by every 9th grader learning about disabilities from students with and without challenges, it transformed their culture. And again, the students noticed this and the students came up with it. So inclusive service learning is a way for them to, when they see injustice or inequity, find something to do about it. And whether it's preventing bullying or addressing homelessness or park cleanups, it's a way to channel that energy. And the University of Minnesota has come up with a year-long curricula, Together We Make a Difference, that we've been able to use, especially with middle and high school students. So the impact of school inclusion programs like Circle of Friends. Teachers develop better relationships with their students and share that it reminds them why they got into education. Principals report a decrease in bullying and a campus that just feels kinder. Neurotypical students develop empathy and say that it's easier for them to step outside their comfort zones. Students with disabilities or other challenges are supported and motivated by their friends to engage socially and academically. When parents say their child is excited about going to school and has real friends, often for the first time. So, coming full circle to the title of this presentation, why do I see our path forward as being a circle? And I think it's important for us to remember why we got into this field or why we became parents. What do children need? And what is our role in bringing that to them? And I'm going to share one of my favorite poems that I used to present in training. It made me think of the kids that don't fit in and put on a front that it's because they don't care. And really it's about fear of rejection, and it reflects experience where they didn't feel safe in the past. So here's the poem. It's called Outwitted. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in. So it was written by Edward Markham, who lived quite a while ago and was born in Oregon. But I found out that he has a significant history in California. He taught literature in El Dorado County, and he was principal at Tompkins Observation School in Oakland, which was the first public school in California to bring in kindergarten and use experimental playgrounds to help children get along. So probably one of the first SEL programs. Finally, 6 California schools have been named in his honor. So I just love that poem. I'm going to read something that I saw posted during the pandemic. The schools are broken, they said. It must be the teachers. And so they came for us. They gave a scripted curriculum so we would know what to teach. Creativity and individuality could not be trusted. They imposed state testing so we would know how well we taught. Otherwise, we might just sit at our desks all day. They demanded SMART goals and evaluations so that we would constantly improve. Without that, we would never strive to get better. We were monitored, we were graded, we were told we were lacking. Then the world shut down. Get rid of standardized tests, they cried, and they did. They dropped the scripted curriculum, the SMART goals, the evaluations. And you know what? The teachers are still teaching. They're using Legos to teach arrays and cookie recipes to teach fractions. They're infusing creativity and passion. They're staying up all night researching new ways of teaching. They're connecting with students like never before. Students are begging to go to school. Families are coming together to learn. No testing, no curriculum, no evaluations. And maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't teachers at all. So those of you that know the experience of the last year as parents and teachers know what it took to get through that year and how flexible and resilient you had to be. So another poem that I like by Masahide, Japanese poet. Barns burnt down, now I can see the moon. So if we think of our schools as being that barn that had to completely burn down in the last year, and what we were able to see about what's possible as we looked up and had to create for ourselves, I think it's important that we make sure that things don't go back, that we continue to learn. There's funding for things like social emotional learning and inclusion. I don't want that to get shifted to technology because they learned about online learning. We need to keep in touch with the people. So I see that we have an opportunity to change how schools work for all children. And teachers and parents need to advocate for themselves, their students, and their communities. We cannot allow the system to avoid discomfort or go back to the way we've always done things. And I believe that teachers and parents can absolutely do that. And I want to thank you for spending this time with me.